Now, this is a pointer type of bird dog. This is the person that is your eyes and ears and nose sniffing out items for attention. You know, Pastor, did you notice that Mr. So-and-so has not been attending church? You really ought to go talk to him. Any of you ever met a bird dog? Have you noticed that this couple who are attending church, I'm not sure, Pastor, but what they're living together. You really ought to look into that matter. Bird dogs. They are people who point out what might be going wrong in your congregation. Rule or law, there is never a lack of someone to tell you how to do your job. There will never be a shortage of that in any local congregation. What do you do about a bird dog? And what is the largest single hazard of a bird dog in the congregation? Anybody got any ideas? First of all, what's the largest hazard of a bird dog? Charles?
He's talking to everybody else too.
That you've got to assume. You have to assume that if he's talking to you, he's also talking to other people about it. What else? What else qualifies as a part of the hazard? Yes?
Misinformation.
Yes, that's a very important part of it. May not be the most important, though, because misinformation you can sort out. I'll tell you where the real problem comes. Suppose that you have been counseling with a family in the church where the man and his wife or their marriage is in the process of coming apart. And the man or the woman, during the process of this situation, leading up to it, had a brief affair with a third party, but she's sorry for it, and she and her husband are trying to work it out. All right, this bird dog who is sniffing around all the places and has been reinforced because she has been right 2 or 3 times. I don't know why it's a JC, it could be he as well. Because he or she have been right and point out these things, will find out about this, will come to you and will say, Pastor, don't you know that Mrs. So-and-so had an affair with Mr. So-and-so, and why didn't you do anything about it? All of a sudden, the thing is out of your hands. You know, and it hasn't happened to us in our way we are right now. It wouldn't happen in quite that way because our churches are all so small, and you're not. But the way these pastors have had it happen to them is here he is working, you know, trying to and getting close to solving the problem. The next thing he knows, somebody stands up in a church business meeting and asks him about it, point blank, right out in front of everybody. And somebody wants to discipline this couple or this person or whoever did this. And the human wreckage that can result from that and the damage that can be done is absolutely incalculable. Absolutely incalculable. So the real risk involved with the bird dog is that the bird dog will blunder into and sniff out things that are none of their business, none of anybody else's business, of situations that are already in hand and already being quietly and privately dealt with. And they will tend all of a sudden to make it a major issue and imply by it that you are not doing your job. So you can see there's a problem there, can't you? What do you do about it? Yeah.
I would tell the bird dog to let he among you who is without sin cast the first stone.
Okay, that's one thing you could sure do about it. What else?
Now.
When you get to certain minor problems, and this is the initial the situation. Mr. Pastor, did you know that Mr. So-and-so hasn't been at church in 3 or 4 weeks? You really ought to go by and see him. What do you do?
If I'm aware of it, I would tell him I'm aware of the situation, and if I've counseled with him, I've counseled. If I haven't, I haven't. And I've had that happen, you know. Do you know somebody's not in church? Yes, I know that they haven't been here. So that they understand that I'm on top of the situation. Okay.
What else? What else would you do? Anybody have a suggestion? Paul?
I think one of the things that you encounter like that when a person's come to you, you can tell them, well, look, I'm aware of it, and now that you're aware of it, they do have this problem, they're working on it, and I'd appreciate your prayers in helping me to work with them in overcoming this problem. Right. And then when you tell them that, it puts a different situation on them.
Right. Bob?
Certainly ask them to not go around talking to the other people in the congregation, because this is a very serious matter, and if they have any concern for those people that they're bird dogging, then they should keep it to themselves and let the minister handle it.
You certainly should do that, but it probably won't work.
And
a case like that, I usually tell the people, well, I'm aware of the problem, and I'll handle it and cut the conversation to show it as possible.
But you see, what you do with that is that they say, oh, good, well, there really was a problem. And you have, even partially, you've reinforced them. There is a way, though. It isn't the only way, and it doesn't always work, but it is a way on something like church attendance. Well, Sister Jones or Brother Bob, what are you going to do about it? Because you see, the assumption that you are the only one in the church that can do anything about problems like church attendance or sick people or you name it is a fallacious problem. You know, Sister so-and-so is really discouraged. You know, I really think you ought to visit her. You know, well, are you going to visit her? When are you going to visit her? In other words, what one preacher said when he talked about it, he said, what I need, he said, as a pastor, is not more bird dogs, but more shooters. I don't need more people pointing out problems in the congregation for me to go deal with. I need more people who are willing to make an effort themselves to go do something about it. Now, I'm not talking about involving themselves in marriage disputes. You know, I'm not talking about getting involved in the serious matter. What I'm talking about is heading off the bird dogs in the early stages of everything, where you're dealing with small things, and you do it by putting them to work. By saying, fine, I really appreciate it. I would have really appreciated it if you would go see him and talk to him and see what you think might be done about getting him back to church. Because this is one of the things I think that you have. A lot of people, I don't know what it is exactly about it, but they see their job as telling you how to do your job. And the way you cure them of it is putting them to work, making them realize that they have a responsibility. And I think if you keep people a little more active in the things where they can be effective, they are less likely to involve themselves in other areas. And I think also at the same time, we need to teach and preach compassion so that people do not so quickly sit in judgment of their brethren and start looking for excuses to discipline them. So number one, the bird dog, and you've got to watch out for the bird dog. Not that they're bad people. They are not bad people. They have, in their heart and minds, the same goal you do, and that is what is best for the church. It's just that they are going about it in a non-productive and potentially destructive way. And they need to be put to work. They need to be reminded to mind their own business in the kindest possible way that you can. And you need to also, at the same time, though, be aware that if the person persists in this kind of behavior, that they are a walking time bomb. And that sooner or later, something's going to drop in your lap at the worst possible time. It will always happen at the worst possible time, in the worst possible circumstances. And being aware of it may give you a head start on it and at least keep you from exploding when it does take place yourself. Number two in his list is the wet blanket. This is a person who believes nothing ventured, nothing lost. You know, if you just don't take any chances in life, you really can't use anything. That's the kind of person that when you get in a business meeting and you're trying to, get some plans going, it says, we tried that before and it didn't work. That just won't work here. And there's a reason why it won't work here. This is a very common type of person. They are not as destructive as many others, except they sap your energy and they sap people's strength. They drain enthusiasm out. What do you do with a wet blanket? How would you work with a wet blanket? There.
I'm trying to get them to do something active. Give them some responsibility and make them feel that they're important. Or try to make them feel that they're important. Which they are, really. Which they are. Yes, sure.
What else would you do with a wet blanket? Chris?
Well, I would ask him what could be done. And what will work, and ask him what he can do to take care of it.
I think that's a good way. All these things have involved the common element of involvement. Getting the person involved. And, trying to understand what their vision for the future is. This is, I think, important. Number three, the entrepreneur. Now, this is a person who is very hospitable. One of the first people in the church to shake hands with a new person that comes in the door. One of the first people in the church to invite them over to their home. And one of the first people to try to sell them Mary Kay or Shackley or what else is it going around? I don't want to pick on anyone in particular. Herbalife, beeswax, whatever it is. entrepreneur. What do you do with the entrepreneur in your church? Because really, he is a dragon. He will cause you some problems. What do you do? Nobody wants to touch that one, I guess. Well, I'll make a suggestion or two. The one thing you try to get all your people together on and agree on is that we are not here to make merchandise of one another. We are not. One of the things that we do not do as a matter of church policy is we do not sell to one another as a part of our business prospect. Incidental sales or incidental things between church members is fine. But we do not aggressively market in the church anything as a policy. And you're going to have to be ahead of the situation. Don't let it creep up on you. Because what will happen is somebody will come to you and say, Mr. So-and-so, did you know that John has already got this thing going? He's disturbed 2 or 3 new people. And, of course, implicit in this is that you weren't on top of it and you didn't take care of it. And so you really want to, I think, at some early point in time, when there is not a problem, explain to the people that one of the things we want to really avoid as a matter of policy in the church is marketing efforts in the church. I remember attending church in Chicago many years ago. And on Wednesday night Bible study, which we had in those days up in the Chicago church, and I was up there as a ministerial assistant, there was a table in the back of the hall, and all sorts of people were marketing health foods back there on Wednesday night for the church. And it was a relatively harmless thing as far as the basic idea was concerned. But it had an enormous potential for abuse and offense. And that's one thing you want to watch out for, is that potential for offense. Next dragon listed here is Captain Bluster. Captain Bluster is the guy who always speaks with an exclamation point at the end of his sentences. He acts like a steamroller over whatever there is that goes on. Anybody ever met one of those people that tend to kind of bull their way through and attempt to bull their way? What do you do with Captain Bluster in your church? How do you work with? How do you minister to him? Because that's one of the themes I think we need to keep in mind all the way through this. Not how do you, quote, handle him, but how do you minister to Captain Bluster? Any ideas? Anybody here have a Captain Bluster, or have you encountered one along the way? Somebody that tends to just kind of roll right over everything that's going on around. Are any of you a Captain Bluster? Well, it's interesting. Nobody quite knows what to do with this gentleman along the way. Really, there isn't. It isn't an easy problem to solve. But with a Captain Bluster, a person who does tend to steamroller over everything that's going along, you really are going to have to talk to that person. You're going to have to spend some time with him. You need to take him out for coffee, get in a non-threatening environment. You need to sit down and say, John, oh, I really appreciate what you do. I hope John, how many Johns are there here that I'm walking offending? I'm sorry about that. John, anyway, we'll do it anyhow. I want you to understand how much I value what you have to say and what you have to contribute to this church. But I need your help. I need your help because what's happening is you have such strong opinions and such a clear vision of the future and so much drive to accomplish it that you are smothering a lot of other people that we would like to hear. Sometimes just making Captain Bluster aware of what he is doing is enough, because really all he wants is what's best for the church. He has a clear idea, see, of where he's going. And he thinks that all it takes is enthusiasm to get there. And he is determined to just plow right on through and leave everybody swirling in his wake as we make our way on toward the kingdom of God and our greater vision. But it doesn't work that way. And a lot of times you can step on people or hurt people as you go along. The next one is the Fickle Financier. Now, these are the people who have financial clout and try to influence programs in the church with that financial clout. I remember one man not long ago wrote me a very critical letter of what we were doing in Tyler. I mean, it was one of these, designed to take the paint off your mailbox. And he enclosed with the letter a copy of his annual receipt, but made no comment about the presence of the annual receipt in his letter. Now, why do you suppose that receipt was in there? It was a pretty healthy contribution. It was not bad. Why do you suppose that receipt was in there? Well, I wrote the fellow back, and I basically answered his objections. I said, I understand what you're saying, da-da-da-da. By the way, I noticed that you enclosed a copy of your annual receipt, but you didn't explain, are you having a problem with your records? if you would like to, if you would like to send me a copy of your stubs or a list of your thing or explain the problem, I'll be glad to sort out your receipt for you. Just let me know what your problem is. And I haven't heard from him. He never wrote back. And I think what he was trying to do was to say, look, I am a loyal, strong supporter of your organization. I deserve to be heard. That's really all the gentleman was trying to say. And I tried to be a little tongue-in-cheek in my reply to him. I didn't want to just hit him across the nose with it, but I thought I would at least nudge him a little bit in the ribs in the process. I think we have to somehow, along the way, let people know that the church is not for sale. And I don't know how you do that in your local congregation. Probably in your area it is not a major problem yet. But we all know that there are people who would not send a dime to Tyler on a bet, but who will contribute locally. And we know there are people who don't contribute locally and send all their money into Tyler. And everybody tries to make a statement, I guess, about how they feel about things by where they send their money. And it is largely ineffective because if somebody says, well, I'm not going to send any money to Tyler, I'm going to give all my money locally, then you got some other people who look and say, well, we don't need any money locally. We got plenty of money in the fund. I'll send the money to Tyler. And the end result is everybody winds up with a certain amount of dollars, and it just, gets shuffled around. Do you ever have any problem with people, though, who try to use their financial clout in the congregation, or let's say totally, to use it to influence programs? Does that ever happen? Nobody seems to have experienced that particular problem here. Yes, John?
I've seen it happen in other churches, but not in the Church of God International.
I think one of the reasons probably is because most of our churches are really quite small. The one thing you need to understand, though, is that as your assets grow, so will this problem. Once you have something, you then have something to argue over. Few things, I think, have generated more disputes in local churches of other church organizations than money. Would you agree? That has probably been one of their biggest problems, money and assets. In other words, the building program. One preacher talked about the fact he never really had any trouble with his local church until they started a building program. Put an enormous amount of strain. Well, think about it. Think about it. When you get going on this, and the pastor was kind of ramrodding the whole thing through, how much chance did he have of avoiding criticism from some ladies in the church about the color of the carpet? Did he have a chance? Not a chance. Somebody, don't know who, would not like the color or the choice of the carpet and the wallpaper or the way in which this was done. What would be your advice to a minister who is having problems with criticism of his use or with the church's use and development of the assets with this type of thing? Bob?
Talking strictly about the building program and what's going in it, if I were pastor, I would get an outside consultant or someone outside of the church that is qualified to make those decisions.
That is an obvious move, really. Get somebody else. But you know what the bottom line is stay out of the way. There are some things that you as a church are going to do which are bound to engender criticism. You will, if you think about it, you will know before you start that it will, right? What do you need to do? You need to stay out of the line of fire. Let somebody else take care of certain of those responsibilities. Why should you, as a minister, concern yourself for 1 minute about the color of the carpet, the stained glass windows, if you were building that kind of a church? Why should you concern yourself with anything except those things which are your business? Why not leave all that stuff to the respected, mature, experienced members of the congregation who are in a position to take the heat without doing any damage to anybody in the process? The fact that somebody gets upset at one or two or all of your local council because they don't like the way the council did something. You see, they have to, at this moment, their anger is diffused. It is focused at 5 or 6 or 7 people instead of at 1. You can't get as much anger focused on 7 people as you can at 1. It's diffused. And those 7 people can reinforce one another. They can support one another. And they have another big thing going for them. They were elected by the congregation. So you all put us in here. What are you doing? What are you saying? Now that we're doing what we were elected to do. Much stronger position to handle criticism of financial matters. My advice to the ministry is to stay out of it. Stay out of it. To be above it, if that's the word for it, but apart from it. Because if you will stay out of it, when the conflict does arise, you will not be the object of wrath, and you will be in a position to negotiate as an honest broker and to make peace. And you can't make peace if you're one of the person who is at war. It's hard to do. You are no longer perceived as objective. You follow me? Once you are no longer perceived as objective, you are useless when it comes to trying to solve the problem. One of the things that is very difficult to convince active, intelligent people like yourself to do is not to meddle in things that you don't have to be involved with. And if it isn't something that is your business and that you really have to be involved with, delegate it or get rid of it or let somebody else take care of it so that when the heat does come, you can negotiate them smoothly right on through and make peace between the warring parties and get everything right back in focus again. It's much easier for you to say, brethren, just how important is it in the ultimate scheme of things what color the carpet on the floor is? If you are the one who selected it, that has a hollow ring to it. If your wife is the one that selected it, it's even hollower. So just don't do it. Do not expose yourself to criticism unnecessarily. And of course, you can save yourself a lot of headaches with a fickle financier by not involving yourself unnecessarily in financial matters in the church. You should be consulted by the council consistently about these matters, and you should consult the council about matters that you are deciding that are your business, but let's never forget whose business is whose business, and we won't have a lot of that type of headaches. Another dragon is the busybody, and this is the person who just enjoys telling other people how to do their jobs. Always got a suggestion, always got an idea, and there isn't really, a lot of times there's no cut and dried way of handling this particular person. A lot of times you have to realize they're just trying to help. They don't really mean any harm. They have the best interests of the church at heart, and they think this is the way of going about it. I've heard some ministers talk about, they tried to explain to one of these busybodies who kept calling every Sunday afternoon to criticize the sermon of that morning. And finally one day he realized that this person who was calling him as a man, he just wanted to talk to the minister. He didn't have anything else to talk to him about, so he called to talk about this. And he finally realized that the man really wasn't trying to be a problem, and he wound up just reading the Sunday newspaper while he listened to the guy on the phone and sat there and listened to him about a half hour every Sunday afternoon. It was important to the man. He did it, went through it. It's not necessarily what I recommend, but sometimes that's what a person has to do. But the point is that the busybody doesn't need to be assassinated. You don't need to put out a contract on him or her. You don't need to get rid of them. You don't need, or anything, or offend them for that matter. Because in most cases, all they're trying to do is to help. It may be necessary somewhere along the line, if the busybody is starting to cause problems for other people, that somebody may have to talk to the busybody, but we'll go into that later. Another dragon is the sniper. The sniper. Now, the sniper is much more dangerous than the busybody, because the sniper always avoids face-to-face confrontation. He's not the person who will come up to you and sit down and look you in the eye and say, Pastor, I think you made a mistake. Just won't do that. He's the person who avoids face-to-face confrontation. He works this way. Be sure and pray for our minister. He has some problems, This is one of the oldest. I'd heard Mr. Armstrong make that comment about some people up in Oregon years ago, how they were going around saying, you need to pray for Mr. Armstrong. He has some problems, So there's nothing new under the sun, is there? Here's a Baptist minister writing in this book. I don't know if Shelley's Baptist or what he is, because the illustrations are from all sorts of churches, who cites exactly the same phrase. Be sure and pray for our minister. He has some problems, The sniper. How do you deal with a sniper? Hard to deal with him, because most of the time you don't know he's there until way downstream. What do you do with a sniper? Anybody have any suggestions? Nobody ever had any acquaintance with a sniper. Well, I think maybe we'll just go on through and consider kind of in bulk some of the things we do with some of these people. Next one is the bookkeeper. It's important, though, that you know the sniper is there. The bookkeeper. This is a person that keeps a written record of everything you do that is not in the Spirit of Christ. They write down, keep their diary. They keep books on you. And whatever it is you do that's right, they do. And if it's not right, they write that down. Then there's the merchant of muck. This is the person that knows everything everybody in the church has done that's bad and likes to talk about it and exchange it with her. We call him a gossip. Then there's the legalist, whose list of absolutes, that is, of things that have to be done a certain way, extends from everything to the, what kind of chairs we're going to have in church to, whatever aspect of church policy. And I don't mean just God's law, but he takes the same approach to God's law, but has this huge, long list of absolutes. Now, these are just a few categories. Now, what all these people have in common is that they engage in behavior that is destructive to the church, not just aggravating to you. And this is the thing you need to keep in mind, the difference between a dragon and a person who is just maybe a minor or a short-term irritant. Because there are people who will cause you certain problems that do not pose any particular threat to the church or are not engaging in destructive behavior to the church, and there is a difference between the two and a difference in the response that is expected on your part. Now, Marshall goes on to recommend or mention again recognizing a dragon. How can you spot a dragon? Answer, you can't tell by looking. You cannot tell by looking. You can't even oftentimes tell by what they say. Because people can criticize, dogmatize, and argue with people and be argumentative and still not be dragons. Because criticism and even pontificating occasionally and even getting involved in arguments with people is not necessarily destructive to the church. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. The distinguishing, according to Shelley, the distinguishing characteristic of a dragon is not what is said, but how it is said. Now that is really interesting to think about, because if you start thinking about your own arguments in your own family, isn't that the case there? If you were to look at a written transcript of a family argument, you probably would wonder what in the world is all of the upset about. Because you can't tell, because oftentimes when you're arguing with your wife or your husband about something, you will say, well, you said, your attitude is such that you felt that, and you go on and on, and he said, well, that is not what I said. What I said was, and you state what you said verbatim, and you're absolutely correct, that is what you said. But it isn't what you said, it's how you said it, comes back the bride of your youth, right? Have you ever heard that? Well, she's right. It is how you say it. And it does make an enormous amount of difference. We communicate far more by our tone of voice than we do sometimes by what we are actually saying. We can communicate an enormous amount by the choice of time. Where are we? Who is around? What are the circumstances? Is the time chosen to embarrass? And sometimes you would firmly believe that it was. Now, these are the things you begin to understand. It's not just that the person disagrees with a policy of yours in church. It is the time and the place and the circumstance and the manner that they go about bringing it up to you. Somebody comes to you face to face and said, Can we go have a cup of coffee down at the local place? You wander down there and sit down, you have a cup of coffee, and he looks you in the eye and he says, I may be wrong, but I think you've made a mistake in this, Mary, and I wanted to talk to you about it. Now, that tells you a lot about the person. Is that a dragon? No, not at all. But he could tell you the same thing in front of a church business meeting at just the wrong moment of time when you were not in any way prepared for it, when you hadn't had any chance to formulate your reply. Yeah, he's a dragon, because that kind of behavior is destructive to the church. Even though well-intentioned and sincere, the dragon is not quite with you. Not quite with you. Another distinguishing thing is they have a spirit that enjoys being an adversary rather than an ally. Now, that may be a little hard to quantify or to explain entirely, but there is an attitude, a frame of mind, a personality type that is far more comfortable in an adversarial relationship and being your adversary, and they're not as comfortable in a situation where they are working as an ally alongside somebody arm in arm. I don't know why that is, but it is true that some people have a spirit that is more comfortable or enjoys being an adversary more than being an ally. And that is a pattern which indicates the presence of a dragon. They have a consistent pattern of focusing on narrow special interests rather than on the big picture. Or just what is the issue? Does it have to do with the goals of the church? Does it have to do with the well-being of all the brethren? Does it have to do with, the reaching out to the world with the gospel of the kingdom? Or is it something that is very narrow and of very personal and special interest to the people concerned? That's where the focus is often done. The spirit of a dragon, he says, and I quote, theirs is a spirit that is quick to vilify and slow to apologize. Why do you suppose that is? Quick to speak evil of another person, quick to put a person down, and very slow to apologize. Well, he goes on to say, dragons usually cannot bring themselves to accept responsibility for something that has gone wrong, and hence they resist asking anybody's forgiveness. Why are they slow to apologize? Because they don't want to recognize that they have done anything wrong. Now, right here, we come, I think, to something I'd like to digress for just a moment into, because how we deal with responsibility is the great watershed, frankly, of personality and character. There is a very narrow razor's edge of how we properly deal with responsibility. Virtually all the people in the world fall into one of two categories. We either accept too much responsibility or we accept too little. We accept responsibility for things we didn't even cause. We feel accountable for things that are really not even any of our business, and we oftentimes carry this terrible burden around with us. These people are often called neurotic. They're neurotic because they are obsessed with responsibility. They are overly responsible for things in their life. Then there are the people who accept too little responsibility, and alcoholics generally fall into this category. As one person pointed, it's far easier. I mean, neurotics do become alcoholics. They really do. They can. They get alcohol dependent. But neurotics, people who accept too much responsibility, he said, are much easier to cure because they will accept the responsibility for what they're doing. The alcoholics that don't get cured are on the side of people who, well, it's my wife's fault. It's my father's fault. It's my mother's fault. It's society's fault. It's the world's fault. They've always got what we used to call the ambassador salute here, you know, the pointed finger at somebody else. This is what one psychologist calls a character disorder. Two categories of people. So everybody's either neurotic or got a character disorder, and it's all a matter of degree. Because the line of exact and proper care of responsibility, he theorized, was so narrow that nobody ever succeed in achieving that. Dragons tend to err on the side of not being willing to accept responsibility. Ministers tend to err on the side of accepting too much responsibility, and they are destined then for perpetual conflict. And frankly, one of the reasons that I look around me at the ministry in the Church of God International, I watch you fellows, and I get your letters, and I get letters from people about you and so forth all the time. The pattern that I have seen of ministers who have gotten into trouble, the most consistent pattern is that the minister has accepted too much responsibility for too many things. He has tried to do too much. He has tried to be too many things to too many people. He has engaged in the overly responsible behavior patterns. Now then, you get in a church somebody who, even though they get involved and are very active, will never accept the responsibilities for their mistakes, but always have got to find a way of explaining why it wasn't their fault. They got to find somebody, and who should they look to but that person most likely to accept the responsibility for what went wrong? Who would you blame? You blame that minister because he's bound to accept the responsibility. He probably will apologize for it when he didn't even do it. It's happened. Happens all the time. Because you fellows are able to sit there and you reflect upon it and you say, yeah, I really could have done better, and I really wish I had done better, and you look back and, you know, if you'd had all that foresight, you wouldn't have done it in the first place, but you made the best decision you knew how to do at the time, and maybe your decision did contribute to the problem. And so you'll get up there and you'll apologize when you're no more to blame for it than anybody else in the congregation, but we can blame the minister because he will accept the responsibility. You don't help dragons by allowing them to sidestep that responsibility. Another consequence of all this, another factor is that most ministers are exposed and most dragons are not. The minister is vulnerable. The dragon is not. That combination of exposure, which is in itself an acceptance of responsibility, the fact that you are willing to get up in front of people and speak, exposes you. You know, you make yourself vulnerable when you do that. All these people are sitting there looking at you, and they're ready to criticize, and they can show you all manner of things that are wrong with what you're doing if they decide that's what they want to do. So you are very, very vulnerable. And the dragon can pick his time. He can pick his place. He can pick his circumstances, or he can decide not to act, and all you can do is just blindly go your way and be completely at his mercy. Kind of sobering when you think about it, isn't it? Almost scary to think in terms of being a minister and exposing yourself to that kind of criticism, but you need to know what the battlefield out there is like. You also need to know where you're going to find these adversaries, where you're going to find these people who will create this kind of problem, even while they're trying to work for the good of the church, just like you are. One of the things that Shelley brings out is that the worst dragons may be, in the beginning, the pastor's strongest supporters. Now, I've noticed this over the years, and I don't want to make anybody overly sensitive, but if I visit an area, if I drive in or fly in or however I happen to get there, and I find in the process of time you encounter somebody who is effusively supportive, overly complimentary, extremely flattering, well, I have gotten, I'm afraid, I'm sorry I have to tell you this, but I might as well be honest with you, I've gotten over the years to where all of a sudden all my defenses start going up. Because my experience, even as Shelley's and other ministers has been, one guy put it, he said, I always kind of halfway expect the problem to come from the man that picks me up at the airport when I fly into town on my first visit to the church. And he said, I've been right 3 out of 5 times. So basically, oftentimes those people who are most supportive of you at some point in time may turn out to be a big problem to you at some later time. Now that doesn't mean you get support, you get defensive about the people who are supportive of you. What it does mean is you don't take them for granted. That's what it means. You do not take anybody for granted. That's logical, easy to take. Just don't assume that because somebody assures you of his undying and permanent support and loyalty, that he will be able to carry through with that regardless of whatever takes place. Dragons often work over hard at befriending you. You know, now it's not bad for somebody to try to befriend you, but when somebody is trying too hard to befriend you, don't take them for granted. You know, accept their friendship, be a good friend to them, but don't assume anything from that, because oftentimes those are the areas from which the greatest difficulty will later on come. He then brings out a point which we've already discussed at least briefly. Dragons usually compare you to their former pastor. They will start making those comparisons and make them fairly early. And if you happen to be in a situation where you are replacing another minister, or you're coming into a congregation that's been in existence for some time without one, this is something you're going to have to watch out for. He says dragons have invariably had previous church experience. Dragons are virtually non-existent among those for whom you are their first pastor. What does that say to you? Does it say anything? Does it say anything to you? What do you think about that, Vernon? Does that make sense to you? Dragons usually come from among people that have previous church experience and not be almost non-existent among new people?
Yeah, I think so.
That match your experience?
Right.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know, unless it's they're backing up on the prior experiences or the way that a mistreatment or whatever from another organization or another time, because
mistreatment, of course, our experience is a major factor. Right. Anyone else have any ideas on that? Yes.
I think they've been around long enough where they can evaluate a situation and come up with their own idea about it and do a spin-off from that. Whereas a new person coming in, they haven't been there long enough to even know what's going on. So it's the longer a person's been there, they're more apt to be more outspoken and try to correct situations and give advice and get involved.
Chris?
I think when a new person comes to the church, they're seeing God much more than they are seeing the individual. And they are more likely to see the fact that, well, I didn't know about the Sabbath, I didn't know about clean and unclean meats, this minister does, this is the Word of God. Their focus is more on God. Someone who has experience, particularly in our case, say somebody from the parent organization, they'll come in and this is all old hat for them, and what they start to do is compare people with one another, which isn't wise. and they start being a little bit judgmental, and they're probably unhappy with themselves to boot, and that's the source of it.
Yeah. Charles?
Most new people are just like little children. They want to be taught. Yeah. Older people that have been around the church, and especially coming from one church to another, do not want to be taught. That's probably the reason why they've left the church they were in, because they would not accept the teachings or that. So they have a preconceived idea of what they want, regardless of whether it's right or wrong.
That's a very important concept. They have a preconceived idea of what they want. They have expectations which you may or may not be able to meet. Whereas the new person coming in, while he has expectations, they are much more vague and much less precise. We have a gentleman here that has a comment as well.
I was going to say that the new people don't have a standard to measure things by as the ones that have been in church do.
It all boils down to expectations. Now, do you ever sit and look at a person, when they're not looking at you, or think about a person and say, now, what are his expectations? What does she anticipate to take place? It's amazing how much you can know if you decide you want to know. We go through an awful lot of our lives without even stopping to think about it. We react, we respond, we do what has to be done, we do it when it has to be done, but we don't actually take a little time to get off by ourselves, put our feet up, stare off into space and say, now, what exactly is going on in these people's minds? What are they hoping for? What do they expect? What do they want from me? What do they have a reasonable right to expect from me? How will they think that I will go about this? How will they think that I should? You know those things. The information that you need is in your mind. The problem is you, in many cases, have not examined it. You haven't sitting down and hauled it all out, maybe taking yourself a yellow pad and started writing down some of these thoughts and sorting your way through them. You'd be amazed at how much you can know, if you will, about people's expectations and what they think they would like to have from you, if you'll just take the time to think about it. Is this something you do when you get ready to do a sermon? It's important. One of the first things you do when you get ready to do a sermon is to sit down in a quiet place, take out whatever it is that you jot down your notes on, but before you start writing anything down, and say, okay, now who's going to be there this week? Where are they driving from? What do they have a right to expect at the end of a 2-hour drive all the way across this area to be with us here today? What are they hoping for? What is it inside of the person that would motivate him to get out of bed on a Saturday morning, and get all of his family together, and the wife to feed the kids and get them all dressed and polished up, and brush their hair and stick them all in the car and drive 2 hours to be here to listen to me today? What in the world motivates them to do that? Because when you start off your preparation by thinking about the people, you are in the best possible position to be effective as their minister. When you start off with a very logical assumption that I should think about the Bible first, you're in a very good position to understand the Bible yourself, but you are not positioning yourself in the best place to start serving the people. Because, see, you already know that Bible, we hope. You already spent a lot of time in that Bible. And you can find where to go in the Bible very soon as you know where the people are and what they need and what they hope for. And sometimes you aren't going to give them what they hope for because you've decided that they need something rather they don't need what they're hoping for, that there's another need that is there. But that is a decision you consciously make with forethought, and when you do that, you accommodate the hope while you fulfill the need. It's logical, but it comes about only when you think about the people, what's going on in their minds. And by nature, men who wind up in a ministry generally do think about people. They generally do have an inclination to want to get inside other people's heads and find out what's going on in there. If they don't, they will never succeed in the ministry, I can tell you that for sure. They may be okay as a theologian or a student of the Bible and be able to deal in abstract concepts and may be effective in that area. But they will never be effective as a servant of the people until they are willing and able to take the time to think about people, ponder people, wonder about people, examine people, talk to people, get to know people. And just, another thing, unless you put some information about these folks in your head, your ruminations on them may be wrong in the process too. So that involves time in getting to know people. Dragons, according to Shelley, are often bred in counseling. Now this one was really not a surprise to me in a sense. I had not quite thought about putting it the way he put it, but it is very true. He said, people often seem to resent those who become too familiar with their intimate struggles, especially when the problem hasn't been overcome. Is that true? Is that true in your experience? That you tend to resent people who know about your fight. Okay? Then you have to realize as a minister that when somebody comes in and explains to you, and you get involved in a counseling session with somebody, you're trying to help them overcome a problem, that the potential for making an enemy out of this person is very great, because they will always feel uncomfortable because of what you know. It's an interesting thought, and I've often seen how in the church, I haven't experienced it too bitterly myself, although I've been slightly or marginally aware of the truth of what he says. But I've seen it oftentimes in the lives of other people. Now, the situation can also become very complicated and very intense in families. And I know Mr. Ted Armstrong has experienced to some extent with his own father the estrangement that comes about from awareness of one another's deficiencies along the way. And it really, I wouldn't want to go into that in a lot of detail, but it is something that all of us are at least marginally aware of. And the intensity of those feelings can be awesome at times. So what does this say to you, then, as a minister, when you realize that this potential is there? The ideas? Think about it. What does it say? It's got to say something to you. Now, you can't avoid counseling, can you? Charles?
Tells me that I really have to be prepared for the counseling session. In dealing with supervisory personnel, I have found that it's not what you do, it's how you go about doing it. You do have to understand how you're going to handle the situation. And in counseling, when you get through the situation in counseling, you do not want to get an adverse or a confrontation type of counseling session, because you can't help someone if you're setting up and you're running headlong with the gentleman. It's got to be something that you're an impartial person who is trying to help whatever the situation is.
Absolutely.
One thing you got to really realize whether or not you can solve their problem for them, first off. And don't leave it unsolved, because then, like the bird dog, if he gets word of it, why then it's going to cause problems among a lot of the people. So you want to be sure that you can solve the problem.
Great.
Another thing would be, don't go looking for problems that they're not talking about. You need to listen to them, and you need to reserve to them their own privacy and dignity. And the fact that when they are coming for help is not the time to try to kick them lower or to make a further point, but to try to help them to make some progress there. And then with that encouragement, maybe then they will be able to face something else on their own accord later, and let them be the one who does the timing on that, but that they can retain their own dignity. And if they can feel that way, then they won't feel so uncomfortable if they have to meet you in the course of normal social interchange.
Have any of you ever experienced a counseling situation where you were on the receiving end of it, and where you felt that the person counseling with you was a little too nosy? Anybody ever experienced that, where somebody tried to dig in? Yeah, John?
I've experienced where they seem to have such a superior attitude that I felt foolish for ever thinking that they could help me in the first place.
Fair enough. What Chris said really is critically important. And it basically is, don't go digging around in people's lives. I have known ministers who have, when a person came to them with a problem, and they began to try to explain the nature of the problem, the person would engage in a great deal of circumlocution. In other words, he would talk around the problem without getting right down to it, and where the minister felt then that he had to bore in, to use the expression one minister liked to use, to bore in on the problem, to get right down to the roots of the problem, and he would begin to ask very embarrassingly specific questions about a person's very private life. and go dig, 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 dig. The point is, you may find out something you don't really want to know. And it's there, and to me, the potential for resentment is far greater if you have dug into or bored in or have unearthed something about a person than if that person has voluntarily, freely told you themselves. The potential for resentment, far greater. So, consequently, when you are counseling with a person, there are two things that you need to really keep in mind. One is there are definite limits on your ability to counsel and help people with their problems, and there are some people that should be referred to professionals. Don't try to do too much. In one sense, that phrase is one of the themes that I'd like to drum into the heads of every minister in this church. Don't try to do too much. It's hard to quantify that statement. It's hard to explain it. But it's critical that you somehow come to understand it in your life. You get into trouble in counseling because you try to do too much. You assume too much responsibility. You go too deeply into a person's life. You involve yourself too much in areas that are none of your affair. Counseling is really more a matter of trying to help a person find their way than it is of you trying to solve their problems. Don't look for counseling. Don't look for it. Don't try to build a counseling practice. You are not a professional counselor. You're a minister.
Counseling can be a dangerous situation anyway, yes. For one reason, especially in a church. Because if you go to a person to counsel that individual, or a person comes to you for counseling, once they bring out the problem, you may well lose that individual from the congregation. Because he knows now that you know about the problem, and then every time he looks you in the face, he's going to say he knows about it. And you may well lose that individual.
I think that's one of the important things, too, as far as keeping credibility as a minister. Don't ever breach a confidence. Yes. Don't ever breach a confidence when someone comes to you with a problem.
Yeah, don't ever breach a confidence. It will be known that you did. It will be known. And as one of the, what is the worst place to breach a confidence? Blank expressions again. The pulpit. The pulpit. Just because you don't mention names doesn't mean you haven't breached a confidence. If only one person out there knows, and that's the person that gave you the confidence, you have breached it. As far as they are concerned, you have torn it, and the resentment will be there, and it'll stay there. Yes, John?
Well, I guess because of my youthful demeanor, young people are always, not always, but frequently confiding in me or asking me for advice. And a lot of the things they want to talk about, I don't want to know about. Because then, because I'm between them and their parents, and I think they really should be talking to their parents. And so a lot of times I just tell people, look, if this is in any way going to embarrass you or anything, just don't tell me, because I don't want to know. Somebody else could help you better, or maybe you better help yourself. And I don't want to know private details about people's lives because I don't want to be responsible for them.
I think I know what you're. I think it's very wise to be that way. And I think also you need to let people know that, look, I am a minister. I'm not something else. I'm not a marriage counselor. I'm not a drug rehabilitation person. I'm a minister. I can tell you what the Bible says, and I can deal with theology and with philosophy of religion, and I can deal with the belief system and faith, and I can help you with those things. But I can't help you with the psychological and physiological side of your problem. You are going to have to seek professional help for this if you're going to get it. So, finally, for this session before lunch, one thing that you need to understand also, and you may grab hold of the wrong end of the stick if you're not careful. Dragons often sensed a call to the ministry at one time in their life and denied it. There are two kinds of dragons you will find. One is those that have wanted to be in the ministry and have been denied. The other type who have felt God's call and have not responded to it, and the guilt is there. Frankly, the latter of these is probably more dangerous than the first, because they don't realize what they're dealing with. They just can't understand it. And this is one of the things that you have to deal with. As Shelley puts it, it's the frustrated armchair pastors who want to run the church. Frustrated armchair pastors. Why do you suppose it is that a person who feels a call to the ministry would deny it, not follow on through into it? I can think of a lot of reasons. I think of a lot of reasons why I might not want to, but I think of these really more in hindsight than I ever could have in foresight. I see what the job of minister really is now, and in times you think, do I really want to do this? And I have to say, yeah, I do. But why do you suppose people make that decision? And how would that, or why they back off from it, and how would that affect their relationship with the church at later times? Pardon?
Not wanting the responsibility.
Not wanting the responsibility, I think, is fundamental. Yes, right up here.
One of the reasons would be that the people would back away because they may not feel that they're good enough. And then they see a minister, a person that is a minister, and they see, in our opinion, that he's not good enough. And they can start resenting him.
Yeah. That can certainly be true. Anyone else have any suggestions to offer? Well, I think this is something you have to think about. And that is that there is in people who are going to become whose behaviors are destructive to a local church, that there is some disorder in their attitude toward their own ministry that is involved. It may be that they want it and have been blocked from it. It may be that they should have been in the ministry and denied it themselves. And if you can somehow help them to deal with that, you may find a solution to the problem. You may find the solution to the problem. And so that brings you to another thing, that there is a time, and it's really just about the time you first realize that a person has any potential for creating a problem of this nature. You need to spend some time with that person. And you need to talk to them. And one of the things that you need to try to wait for the opportunity, because the time has got to be right and you've got to do it with love and with consideration, you need to ask them if they feel that they ought to be in the ministry or that they ought to have a ministry themselves. And this is just as true of women as it is of men. Because after all, the Bible did speak of deaconesses, remember? And there were some prophetesses in the early church as well. So don't ever just, don't think this is purely a male prerogative. Because there's nothing, stupid about asking a woman, have you ever felt that God, had a ministry for you? And help them to understand their own feelings about the ministry. And try to understand yourself their feelings and sympathize with their feelings about the ministry, not your ministry. We're not going to worry about your ministry. What we're concerning ourselves now is their ministry and their failure. Because a lot of times the fact that people feel guilty about their own service of God causes them to lash out at other people. And what they're really attacking is themselves. So if you can crank that into your thinking, and at some early point with a person shows some of the signs of becoming a dragon in your church or causing a problem for other people, find out how they feel about their own ministry, and you might be surprised at how easy it is to work your way around that particular problem. Okay, well, let's take a break now for lunch next door, and we'll take up again after lunch with how dragons see themselves.